Hello and welcome to Musings of a Mad Woman. As the name suggests, on this channel you will find my mentally ill 4 a.m. shower thoughts, presented in an adorable toddler voice, which is just what all Estonians sound like when we try to speak English. There will be subtitles. Anyway, I'll mostly be talking about Harry Potter with some other topics of pop culture and maybe a bit of history mixed in, so if you like those things, do please subscribe and hit the little bell so you get notifications. I've been a Harry Potter fan since I was about 10 years old, but even back then I had some major issues with the series, so now that I'm an adult with some critical reading skills, no job and a biology student, that I thought I might do what everyone else is doing and start a YouTube channel. So here we are. And the first thing I would like to talk about is the Weasley family and their poverty, or lack thereof. We are repeatedly told in the Harry Potter books that the Weasleys are poor, both by the narrative voice and by characters, protagonists and antagonists. For example, when the Weasleys win 700 galleons in a lottery, Harry thinks, Harry couldn't think of anyone who deserved to win a large pile of gold more than the Weasleys, who were very nice and extremely poor. And at the Quidditch World Cup, Lucius Malfoy mocks Arthur. "Good Lord Arthur," he said softly, "what did you have to sell to get seats in the top box? Surely your house wouldn't have fetched this much." There are even several videos on YouTube asking the question why the Weasleys are so poor, with most people seeming to agree that the main reason is their large number of children, with some other factors like Arthur's lack of ambition and career progression also playing a part. And the Weasleys see themselves as poor, for example in Goblet of Fire. Ron speared a roast potato on the end of his fork, glaring at it. Then he said, "I hate being poor." But is he? Are they? Really? I mean, really? I don't think so. When Harry first visits the Weasleys, he describes their house like this. They had landed next to a tumble-down garage in a small yard, and Harry looked out for the first time at Ron's house. It looked as though it had once been a large stone Big Ben, but extra rooms had been added here and there until it was several stories high and so crooked it looked as though it were held up by magic, which Harry reminded himself it probably was. Now, that's certainly a far cry from Malfoy Manor, but then what isn't? The Weasleys may live in a house held together by magic, but they still own their own home and even some land. They have an orchard, which is large enough to host Bill's wedding in Deathly Hallows, and apart from Fred and George, who share, the kids all have their own bedrooms, and Molly and Arthur have a master bedroom. Nobody sleeps in the living room, which is often the case for people living in poverty in our world. Also, contrast that with people like Hagrid, the groundskeeper who lives on the school grounds in a hut. Hagrid's hut has only one room, which is the living room, the kitchen, the bedroom and everything else. Also, as a side note, given how integral magic is to everything in the wizarding world, I think we can assume it's an important component of architecture and construction as well. So Malfoy Manor is probably also held together by magic. It just has better exterior design. But back to the Weasleys. The last point I want to make about the Burrow is that it is located near several other wizarding houses. We are told in Goblet of Fire that the Lovegoods, the Fawcett's and the Diggorys live near. And unlike the Weasleys, the Fawcett's apparently have not managed to secure tickets to the Quidditch World Cup. So this seems like a good area for wizards to live in. The Weasleys are also able to school all their children at Hogwarts. Yes, some of them have to wear hand-me-down robes, but given that those are school uniforms which they are expected to grow out of and never wear again, that makes perfect sense. There is no sense in wasting money on a new set of robes for every kid when an older brother's hand-me-downs are perfectly serviceable. And the same goes for textbooks. I mean, unless the edition is hopelessly outdated, a book is a book. And, those scribbles other students have left in there might even be helpful. The one exception to that is Ron's truly appalling dress robe for the Yule Ball, which was not acceptable. That was not okay to do to a child, but the situation could have easily been mitigated. I mean, Ron tries to cut the lace off the robe to make it look more modern, but he doesn't know how, so he makes it worse. So why didn't Molly, who knows at least enough to knit sweaters for her children, cut the lace off herself? And for that matter, why is the robe maroon, Ron's least favourite colour? Well, for the same reason that Ron always gets maroon sweaters and dry corned beef sandwiches, while Harry gets a green sweater with a dragon on it. Ron is just kind of neglected. Sorry, Ron. You know what else is neglected? The humble like button under this video. Do please press it gently, it will be ever so grateful for the attention. Now, moving on. We never hear about Hogwarts charging fees, but nevertheless, students starting need more than just textbooks and robes. The first year shopping list includes a wand, of course, a cauldron, potion vials of glass or crystal, leather gloves made of dragon hide or similar, which I'm assuming isn't cheap, for herbology, and a telescope, again, probably not cheap. And Molly and Arthur do complain about the high cost of all this when they go shopping, but the Weasley kids never lack for any of it. Ron does use his older brother's wand for the first 2 years, but given that Neville also uses his father's, I think that's maybe just common in the wizarding world. The Weasleys also have enough money to reward their children if those children distinguish themselves somehow. Percy and Ron, for example, receive a new pet and a new broom respectively when they become prefects. And the kids have some pocket money to spend at Hogsmeade and the Quidditch World Cup. Ron may not have as much as Harry, but then Harry is an orphan who inherited a large fortune from his parents, so that isn't really a good comparison. Although, given that Harry is his best friend, it's understandable why Ron compares himself to him. Then there is also the fact that the Weasleys are able to send their children away from home for the better part of the year in the first place. Hogwarts is a boarding school, so that means the kids won't be around to help out at home. Which, given how many, for instance, small shopkeepers we meet in the wizarding world, it's quite easy to imagine that that would be the case in many families. Attending Hogwarts is not compulsory until Voldemort, of all people, makes it so. Traditionally, it has been okay for parents to homeschool their children, and those kids can then show up at the Ministry of Magic to take their owl and newt examinations. So sending their kids away is definitely a choice Molly and Arthur are making for the benefit of their education. We don't know whether any oversight exists for the homeschooling process, but we do see some people in the wizarding world who seem to have had quite a poor education. Take, for example, Stan Shunpike, the night bus conductor who speaks in stereotypical British working-class accent with broken grammar. Gotta love Rowling's depiction of class. That's like a whole other video I could do. Maybe I will. But anyway, the Weasleys also have some quite significant social currency. Arthur may not be as well connected as some, but he does have connections, and we know those can make all the difference in the world of employment. And as a government employee, of course, Arthur is in a position to do favors for others. For example, we are encouraged by the narrative voice to judge Lucius Malfoy for buying his tickets to the Quidditch World Cup top box by donating money to St. Mungo's Hospital. But Arthur got his by doing a favor for a co-worker and helping him with some shady cover-up. If anything, Arthur has outdone Lucius here. Lucius had to pay, albeit indirectly, for his 3 tickets, whereas Arthur got a much bigger number, just doing a favor for a friend. And Arthur is similarly called upon to smooth things over when Moody gets into a spot of trouble about his dustbins, which we know was actually Barty Crouch Jr. As Amos Diggory tells Arthur, they got to get Moody off, and Arthur is the only one who can do it. I also can't resist pointing out that if Arthur and Amos had allowed for a proper inquiry to take place, Moody or party may have been discovered before he ever made it to Hogwarts, and Voldemort may not have been resurrected. But that's what government corruption gets you. Lastly, I want to talk about leisure. Leisure? Leisure. Let me know in the comments. Anyway, the Weasleys have no problem entertaining people to lunch, and they even manage to take some holidays. Molly lays out sumptuous feasts for an admiring Harry, and when the Burrow becomes the headquarters of the Order, she feeds the Order members who come and go. During Harry's first year, Ron stays at Hogwarts over Christmas because Molly and Arthur are going to Romania to visit Charlie, which is quite a distance to travel. And before Prisoner of Azkaban, the Weasleys all go to Egypt for a holiday. Now, that is a result of winning the Daily Prophet lottery, as mentioned before, but even the fact that they are able to spend all the lottery winnings on a holiday instead of having to pay late bills or take care of some other emergency expenses at home speaks volumes. And Arthur even has some money left over to indulge his hobby, his interest in Muggle technology. I imagine old blocks could be had for free, but even a used car would cost money, and Arthur has been working on fixing his up as well. Yes, Arthur, cars, said Mrs. Weasley, her eyes flashing. Imagine a wizard buying a rusty old car and telling his wife all he wanted to do with it was take it apart to see how it worked, while really he was enchanting it to make it fly. So, in conclusion, the Weasleys seem to be middle to lower middle class. With so many children to bring up, their resources are quite stretched, but they are nevertheless able to provide for them all. And they own their own home and a plot of land. Mr. Weasley has a government job and some quite useful connections. And the only reason they seem poor to us is probably because our main point of comparison is Harry, who is actually quite unusually rich, especially for a small child. Other characters we encounter, like Sirius Black or the Malfoys, also seem to come from money, and it's quite natural that we compare them to the Weasleys because we spend a lot of time with them. There is another class of characters who are essentially invisible in Harry Potter, the actual working class wizards, like Stan Shunpike or Ernie the Night Bus Driver, or the sales girls who work for Fred and George when they open up their joke shop, or even the chauffeurs who drive the Weasleys and Harry and Hermione to King's Cross in Book 3 in ministry cars and salute Arthur as a superior. The cars were there for Harry's safety, of course, but still, there are chauffeurs who salute Arthur, and then there is Arthur, the head of a ministry department, even if it is a rather small and insignificant department. The ministry drivers found them trolleys, unlocked their trunks, touched their hats in salute to Mr. Weasley, and drove away. In that sense, Harry Potter reminds me a lot of Jane Austen, and in fact Rowling has said that Austen was one of her inspirations when writing the series. The Weasleys are the Bennets, existing in a state of genteel poverty, comparing themselves to the Malfoys and the Mr. Darcys of the world, but not to their own servants or the people who drive them around or serve them lunch at the pub. In fact, there are many other similarities between the Weasleys and the Bennets, which I will be outlining in my next video, so don't forget to hit the little bell so you don't miss it. Anyway, that was my first semi-structured rant on YouTube, but it won't be the last. I so enjoyed putting it together, and I hope you enjoyed watching. If you did, do please hit the like button, it would help me out so much and it only takes a second. And I'll see you next time.